So, this new series is all built around this word, gratitude. And the reason that we are talking about this is because in our society and in our world, it's really easy, which is why I think that those videos are an excellent expression and good and healthy for us to do. In fact, if you want to shoot one of those videos and submit it for next week, Chrissy in the back, raise your hand, Chrissy, she's doing all things video and pictures and all that. You can shoot one of those videos on your phone and connect with her, and she'll put it in for next week. Now, the reason that we're putting such an emphasis on this is because in our culture, it's so easy to get distracted and to not be thankful, and it's easy to focus on what we don't have instead of on what we do have. In fact, in our world, anytime you open your cell phone and you're looking on any type of social media platform, or you're looking at commercials while you're watching the football game or anything else, you're constantly reminded of what you don't have. I mean, isn't that true? I mean, that's an advertisement, ladies and gentlemen. The advertisement's trying to show you what you don't have. And oh, by the way, if you buy this robot vacuum, I know you got that one, but you dropped it a couple times, so it don't work that well. There's this other one that works real good. So buy that one, right? I mean, that's what we get locked into in our Western culture. So I want to take the next few weeks and just focus in on this idea of gratitude, being thankful for what we have, both the people in our life and for our Lord. Now, as we get started today, I want to share a story. A couple weeks ago, I was making dinner for the family. And I don't know if you don't know this about our family, I'm the cook, Leah's the baker. That's just how we do it. I like to cook, she doesn't like to cook. I don't know the first thing about baking. I would burn the house down, but she can make a mean pumpkin bread, or maybe pumpkin, banana bread, but you should try pumpkin now that I'm thinking about it. But she does all the baking. So I'm making dinner, and I had, it was cold. I was outside doing it on the Blackstone. So I was making smash burgers, and all this stuff. And I have a 6-year-old that's kind of picky. Anybody else have kids that are picky, right? You have kids that are picky? So he's a little picky. He's only eats certain things, and it depends on his mood. If he might eat it one week and then he doesn't the next. So I'm making these hamburgers, and he has taken a liking to them. He asked for them a couple days ago, so I'm like, all right, cool. Make the hamburgers, and I'm thinking, score. He just asked for them, like a touchdown, right? Like, this is going to be great. I bring the food in, and I mean, to feed our family, it takes a lot of hamburgers. So we got lots of them, and I come in with a big plate of hamburgers and cheese on it and everything like that, and set it down, because I got 3 boys. Pray for me. So we set it down on the counter, and then after that, the unspoken rule is like, I don't really prepare their plates after that. Leah does a lot of that. She brings the paper plates out and puts the stuff on it, because we have fine china in our house, paper plates only. So we come in, and she makes the food, and she puts it on the thing and brings it and sets it down. We call them in, right? And I've still got the utensils in my hand, the flippers and all that. I've got them in my hand. I'm bringing them in from the grill. I was obviously just out there on the grill. He saw me doing the hamburgers on the grill. I'm the one that he said, Dad, I want hamburgers. And I said, son, we're having hamburgers today, right? And this is what happened. He comes running in. She's got the plate and sets it down, says, dinner, and he comes running in, and he looks at the plate, and he goes, yay, hamburgers, you're the best, Mom. And I'm sitting there, and I was like, man, I wonder if I could hit him with one of those things and hurt him. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't hit him with the spatula and then tell you about it. I'm not going to do that. So... And it's funny, right? We all joke around about it. And at that time, I felt a little underappreciated. Maybe he didn't think too much of it. But then I joked around with him, and we had dinner, and it was great. And I didn't hold any grudges, and he hasn't had a hamburger since then. So I don't hold grudges. But I'll say this, and that's a funny, lighthearted one. But isn't it true that you've experienced something like that before, where somebody didn't express gratitude to you that was rightly deserved? That you put the time and energy and effort and resources into it, and they didn't appreciate you, or they didn't express it, and since they didn't express it, it feels like they didn't even care. It felt like that maybe your time was even wasted. And this happens in our marriages too. It happens in the relationships that are closest to us. that sometimes we don't mean to, but we come across ungrateful. And it's simply because we didn't express it and we didn't say anything about it. And how do we say it, right? We say things like, I feel taken advantage of. Isn't that true? We say things like, they don't appreciate me. We may even go so far as to assume that they're selfish and only thinking about themselves. And it causes a rift because, believe it or not, and this is why it's so uncomfortable, is because you were wired by God for gratitude, to both give it and to receive it. You don't believe me? We'll look at the science of it, the way you were created. Every time you give thanks or receive thanks, you have what's called the dump of dopamine and serotonin in your brain, directly connected to somebody expressing gratitude or you taking the time to express gratitude. It's why sometimes that when you sit down and you're struggling with stuff, that if you've ever sat with a counselor before, they'll sit down and they'll say, you just need to be thankful. That sometimes it's good to create a thankful list, to sit down and reflect on what you're thankful for because you're wired this way. You're wired to be thankful, and you're wired to give thankfulness because it's so very important. Because when someone withholds gratitude that's deserved and expected, we feel indignant, we're angry, frustrated, and maybe not outwardly right away, but over time, what happens? You get a little more bitter, a little bit more bitter, a little bit more bitter, and before you know it, the relationship is under tension, and it doesn't need to be. Because the truth is, and this is just the nature of it, that unspoken gratitude feels like ingratitude. That gratitude that isn't expressed feels like ingratitude. That if you don't express it, you don't take the time to express it to somebody, then it's the same, or it comes across as, or it's received as ingratitude. And although you might not mean it that way, you might think you are so thankful for them. If you don't say it, they don't know it. They don't know it. And that's true for every relationship in your life, especially the ones that are the closest to you. Because see, the problem is it's ingratitude. It's not a sin of action. It's one of the few things that can damage a relationship by doing nothing, by not saying thank you, by not taking the time, by not reflecting or expressing the thanks. You can damage the relationship simply by ignoring a thing that someone did. And believe it or not, it affects the relationships that are closest to you the greatest, and it destroys them. So today, there's a moment like this. There's a moment where Jesus talks about this in Luke chapter 17. He talks about it because he wants you to get to know, and he wants us to recognize the importance of being thankful in gratitude. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to be in Luke chapter 17. We're going to start in verse 11. Luke 17, chapter 17, verse 11. If you have your Bibles, get there. We'll put it on the screen for you. If you don't have it, here at New Post, we like to say word when you've got it. So if you're, there you go. Of course you got it. You got the screen. She's cheating. She got the screen. It's right there. So if you're there, somebody say word. Word of the Lord. Now, on his way to Jerusalem, talking about Jesus, traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. And I love maps, so I put a map up for you. This gives me some context, give you some context to where we are in the story. Now, that line you see, that's what's called the triumphal entry. This is the path that Jesus took going to Jerusalem for the Passion Week, right? So Jerusalem's all the way down there at the bottom. You see Bethany close to Jerusalem, where we talked last week. Lazarus was raised, very close. Jericho, you're familiar with. And then you see Samaria, right? And then all the way at the top, you see Galilee. Everybody tracking with me? Tracking like a tank. So Capernaum is up there at the top. That's the Sea of Galilee. Where Jesus is as this is happening is that horizontal part. You guys all see the horizontal part? It's happening right there. We don't know the specific name of the village, but it's happening right along the border between Samaria and Galilee. Now, he's avoiding Samaria this time, but there's a story before, a time that John records, where he purposely went through Samaria. So we don't know why he's deciding to go around it this time, but this time he's going around Samaria. So he's on the border between Samaria and Galilee, and as he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him, and they stood at a distance. Why? Because they had leprosy. Leprosy in the ancient world was considered to be contagious, and there was not a cure for it like there is today. There was nothing that they could do. And leprosy causes deformities as well. And it was the ancient tradition of the Jews that if you, as part of the ceremonial law, that if you had leprosy, you were considered unclean and you had to stay away from other people. You were removed from society. You were segregated for the health of the community. Now, the problem with that is these people didn't have a community, a culture, and they could not go to temple because they were considered unclean and they had to be segregated. They couldn't go with family. They couldn't enjoy time. And the thing, too, is it caused deformities, so they were even hard to look at, because what leprosy does is it gets into your nerves, into your body, and it causes issues with particularly your fingers and your toes and your ears and your eyes, to where those sections of your body, you're more likely to hurt them, because guess what? You can feel things on these nerve endings. But leprosy dulls those nerve endings. So what happens is you might pinch, if you slam your finger with a hammer, right? You say, goodness gracious, ouch, that hurt, right? You don't say anything else, but you hit your hand. If you were a leper, you would hit your hand, and you might not even know you did it because of the disease. So consequently, they were deformed. I even thought about putting a picture up to show you guys, but it's very graphic, and I didn't want to do that to you because I don't want to give you bad dreams. But if you're interested, you can go and you can Google it, and you can see what people who are afflicted with leprosy look like, because it's curable here in the United States, but other places they don't necessarily have the drugs to go and fix it. And they are at a distance because they can't get close to people. They're told they can't get close. They have to stay away. And so from a distance, they called out to Jesus, and they said in a loud voice, Master, have pity on us. And again, they have not been around people, so they're at a distance. And that means no temple, no church, no family, no Thanksgiving dinner, no Christmas, right? No Taco Tuesday. They're not allowed to be in groups of people. So they call out to Jesus. They say, Jesus, be with us, have pity on us. And this is another thing that we forget. They would set up communities outside of the village because even lepers need people. And believe it or not, this is true. You need people. In fact, look at somebody right now and tell them. Say, you need people. Tell them. You need people. And all the introverts are like, why'd you make me do that? I don't need people, Brandon. You do. You just need less people than the extroverts. Extroverts need lots of people. You need a little bit of people. It's just it's okay. But you still need people. Because these lepers, as they've been removed from society, they still gather together in a little group outside of the village. So they're gathered together, a little group outside the village, all afflicted. They've heard of this guy, Jesus, the miracle worker, because remember, based on where we were in the story, he's going down to Jerusalem. He's been around for about a little over 3.5 years now. So he's been around. People know of him. He's the miracle worker. He has a crowd of Jews following him. So they recognize, almost, I imagine, if you can picture the scene, the lepers are outside the village. They see Jesus going into the village, and they're like, oh, man, that's Jesus. Hey, he can heal people. I heard he healed one leper already. And they're like, yeah, but we can't get near him. You know how that goes. Yeah, but let's just try to get his attention. We can just get his attention as he's walking by. Jesus, hey, have pity on us. Help us, right? And so Jesus, his response is interesting. If you don't understand the context, you don't know why he says it. But when Jesus saw them, he said, go show yourselves to the priest. To which their first response would have been, we're not allowed to go near people. We're not allowed to go to the priests. We can't go in society. We're not allowed to go in the city, Jesus. So to you to say us to go sit in the priest, that's not something that we can do. Except, as it relates to Jewish culture, the ceremonial law actually required the priest to proclaim somebody as clean. So if you were a leper, before you were allowed back into society, even if all of the physical affliction was gone, you had to show yourself to a priest, and then a priest would say, hey, you know what? Yes, we agree that the sickness has left them, so they can go back into society. So in a sense, Jesus is saying, hey, you're already healed, but you need to go, because the key is it says, as they went. As they went, they were cleansed. As they went, they were cleansed. Now, I need to take a second, and this is not the sermon. This is just part of a thought. And it might be a little bit frustrating or offensive to you. In fact, I need you to help me. So I need you to look at somebody and tell them that the pastor loves you. Tell them that. They need to know that before what I'm about to say. I do. I truly love you. But what if, and I know how offensive this can be, what if your healing is waiting on your obedience? Because notice the lepers were healed as they went along. Jesus could have snapped his fingers and said, you're healed right now, and that's it. And they would have been healed right there. And if that would have happened, Luke would have recorded that, because Luke records that in other sections. So we know that they said it, and then as they went along, they were healed. So here's Jesus saying, go, show yourself to the priest. And they say, okay, we'll go. And as they go, they leave from one point as lepers. They arrive to the priests, and they're cleansed as they went along. What if your healing is waiting on your obedience, your physical, mental, emotional healing? What if your healing that you're looking for in your marriage is waiting for your obedience? Maybe the Lord has told you that you need to go get counseling, but you refuse to go. Or maybe the Lord's told you that you need to follow him closer. He's told you that you need to start being part of a circle instead of just a row on Sunday. And for many of us, we sit back, we get so uncomfortable with this because it's like, surely the Lord wouldn't do that. Yes, he would. And yes, he does. Sometimes your healing requires your obedience. All right, that was real heavy. That wasn't the sermon. That was just a thought. It's just something for you to take home and be frustrated with me later about. So, they're healed. Back to the story. They're healed. They've been healed. And I need you to put yourself in their shoes as we continue. They've not been allowed in society since they've contracted leprosy, and they've been afflicted. They haven't been allowed in society. They're only allowed in their tight-knit little group of misfits that are rejected by society. They're on the outside. They haven't been to temple. They haven't been to worship. They haven't been to church. They haven't been with family. They haven't shared in any of the feasts that are a real big deal in Jewish culture. They haven't done any of that. And now they're healed. One of them, Luke tells us, when he saw that he was healed, he came back praising God in a loud voice. And he threw himself at Jesus' feet, and he thanked him. And Luke knows the implications of what he's writing next. And Jesus knows the implications of what he's going to say to his followers next. Luke ensures that he doesn't forget this detail, that he was a Samaritan. One of those awful Samaritans. Because the Jews, they had racial tension there. They had religious tension there. They had cultural tension with the Samaritans. And Luke, knowing that, wades into that tension, because sometimes the gospel wades into tension. Wades into that tension and says, the one who actually acknowledged the work of Christ was somebody who didn't believe that the Messiah was coming in the way that he showed up. He knows he's drumming up hundreds of years of problems. In verse 17, Jesus asked the man. So the man comes back, and he's very thankful and grateful to God and grateful to Jesus for what he's done. And Jesus asked him the question, were not all 10 cleansed? I mean, I'm Jesus. I don't make mistakes. Were not all of them cleansed? I mean, there were 10 of you before. I saw them. I said, go show yourself to the priest. I've never messed up one of these miracles before. Where are the other 9? Where are the other 9? Nobody else is coming back. It's just you, just the one. No one else is coming back to say anything. He continues in verse 18. He says, has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? And now this is the thing. He did that on purpose because his followers are mostly Jews. They're right on the border of Samaria and Galilee. And Jesus uses this as an opportunity to say, it doesn't matter your pedigree. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter anything else. What matters more is what you believe, and what matters more is your actions. He did not excuse those who didn't say thank you because of their Jewishness. He actually praises the Samaritan for doing the right thing. He says, no one returned to give praise except this Samaritan. Only the Samaritan shows back up and says, thank you. Now you would think the other people are thankful. Certainly they're thankful. Jesus continues, he says, rise and go, your faith has made you well. Because this is the important part. Gratitude that isn't expressed feels like ingratitude. That's how Jesus took it. Did you notice that? Gratitude that's not expressed feels like ingratitude. You mean to tell me nobody else has come back to say thank you for the fact that I healed them from a life-changing disease? And here's the problem. It's not that Jesus wanted to gloat, but it's because gratitude works in a relationship. And he can't have a relationship with those other 9 because they never came back. They never said thank you. And since they never said thank you and they never came back, guess what happened? No relationship with the Lord. The other 9 must have been thankful, surely, but they didn't express it. I have a personal story about this. Years ago, 2016, I was in the Marine Corps, and I was teaching a young Marine. His name was Demetriadis. And he was a great young Marine, very skilled, very good at what he did, but he was very young, and he needed somebody to mentor him and help him do, kind of figure out what it meant to be an infantryman in the Marine Corps. So I kind of brought him under my wing, taught him as much as I could, put him in the team leaders course that we were developing, tried to get him a slot at advanced infantryman, put his promotion packages in, as his platoon sergeant. All those are things that I'm going above and beyond to make sure, because he was a good guy, and give him as many opportunities as possible. Well, time went on. He got all those things, and then he gets his orders to the fleet, and I get released from the Marine Corps, and I come into the church. Come into the church, go through life, just as normal. And then about 3 years ago, I got a message from him. And I haven't seen him in about 4 years. And I haven't even really thought of him in that long, because you go on with life. And he sends me a message, and he says, Sergeant Woodard. I'm not Sergeant Woodard. My name's Brandon. Nice to meet you. I'm not Sergeant Woodard anymore, man. And he says, I just wanted to say thank you for the time that you put in to me when I was a junior Marine, for the energy that you put in, for the resources that you put in, for the late nights that you spent with me before I went in my advanced course, and the time that you spent teaching me, putting in my packages and all of that. He says that as he's about ready to get promoted to E6. He was in E4 when he left. And he comes in and he comes and says, thank you to me. That was years ago that happened. But expressing that gratitude had a profound impact on me, because it showed me, and this is what you do when you express gratitude to somebody. You're showing them that their time, their energy, their resources, whatever it is, mattered. That's what you're communicating when you express gratitude to somebody. You're expressing and showing them that it mattered. And that's so important, because your relationships are dependent upon it. Because gratitude, this is what I want you to take home, and I want you to know, gratitude grows relationships. It simply does. And let's be honest, you've experienced that before. You've experienced somebody coming in and saying thank you. You've experienced somebody expressing gratitude and being very thankful for you. You've expressed or experienced that before. So, I want you to think back to that time. When that happened, were you more likely to do for them again? When they said thank you, were you more likely or less likely to do for them again? Were you more likely to bring them closer to you, or were you more likely to keep them further away from you? How did that expression of gratitude affect your relationship? Did it make it better, or did it make it worse? When they said thank you, did it build trust, or did it take it away? Because you've heard me say this before, that trust is the currency of relationships. It's what's exchanged in any relationship. You need to have trust and gratitude. When somebody comes in and says thank you, you're communicating to them, I can trust you because you care about what I just did for you. And Jesus recognizes and expresses that a lack of gratitude seems like ingratitude because it simply grows relationships. Now, the key is, and the struggle that we have is that we have to be intentional about it. We have to be intentional. We have to set it aside and make sure that we do it on purpose because it doesn't sit naturally. We don't naturally do it. Some of us do, right? If you grew up and you worked at Chick-fil-A, you're used to it. Somebody says thank you, right? And it's the way they do it. You go, my pleasure. It's just the way it is. And maybe you were never raised that way. But I'm telling you, and if you're married, lean in. This will change your marriage. This will change your marriage if you just add those two words, thank you. Thank you. I'm not going to share the whole story, but last night, my wife did that for me. She said, thank you for something that I've been doing that matters a lot to me. And she took the time to say thank you and was expressive. And now I'm ready to run through a brick wall for her again, right? Because that's just what happens. Because it matters when you say it. It's no doubt that you believe it. You're not a bad person. You're not a sociopath that has no feelings. Probably not, right? So don't look around. But you feel gratitude, but feeling it's not enough. You have to express it to them. And when you express it to them, that's when the relationship gets better. That's when your life and your relationship with them begins to change. That's what Jesus wanted. Because those lepers, they left and he wanted them to come back because he wanted a relationship with them. But they didn't come back. They didn't say thank you. And since they didn't say thank you, we never hear of them again in the scriptures at all. But this other one had a reaction and an interaction with Jesus so powerful. Because he showed up and he said, thank you. And now his story is the story that lives on in the scriptures because he showed up and he said thank you. So, the rub for us, the challenge for us is being intentional with it. And I'm telling you, it changes your relationships. And I say it this way. Say thank you for the normal things. Say thank you for the everyday things. And this is what we get out of the habit of. But say thank you. Say thank you for folding the laundry. Say thank you for doing the dishes. Thank you for making dinner. Thank you for going to work. Thank you for prioritizing our kids. I appreciate the time that you put into these things. Right? So people go, I don't need to say thank you about that, Brandon. That's expected. Well, then you can expect to have problems in your marriage if you're not going to say thank you. You can expect to have problems with your siblings if you're not going to say thank you. You can expect to have problems if you think it's expected. Because even though you may think doing the dishes, doing the laundry, making dinner, going to work, all those things are expected, they don't have to. And they're still spending their time and energy and resources on it. And so I'm telling you, it will change your relationships if you start saying thank you for the normal things. Your marriage will be better. Your relationship with your kids will be better. Your relationship with your friends and coworkers will be better if you just say thank you. So today we're going to end the message part a little bit different. I want to really put handles on this for you today because it's so valuable that the Lord made sure it showed up in the Gospel of Luke for us, which means we can't ignore it. So if you're a follower of Jesus, or you're just anybody in the room that has experienced something good from somebody before, I want you to say thank you. And I want you to ask this question: who do you need to thank today? And maybe it's somebody that you grew up with, you haven't talked to in 10 years. Maybe it's you just need to say it to your mom or to your dad. Maybe it's the person sitting to your left or sitting to your right. Maybe it's somebody in this room that you need to say thank you to. So this is what I want to do for the next minute. I want you to pull out your phone. It's the only time the pastor's going to tell you it's okay to use your phone. I want you to pull out your phone, and I want you to send the message to that person. You all have text message. It's 2024. And it's probably free texting too. I bet it doesn't cost you a cent. I'm telling you, it costs you almost nothing, but it will change your relationship. So I want you to grab your phone, or if the person's sitting in the room, then go to them and express thankfulness and gratitude and say thank you. And let's practice this gratitude. So for just a second, we're going to bring the house music up, and I want you to grab the phone, lean over, look to the person, say to the person, thank you for what you've done.